Dallas, can you hear me?
You said, oh, test. Oh, now we can hear me. All right, let's do this again. The agenda will be as follows. Can you hear me, Rich?
I can hear you.
Okay. First, we'll have the approval agenda, then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by announcements. Apologies for the delays. We're working through a few technical things. That will be followed by old business. It's still at
I'm just.
Let's see if I still echo. Yep. Then we'll have old business, no echo. Then we'll have new business. There are 3 items under new business. They are all quasi judicial hearings. The first item is a request to amend the boundary of the city of Newberry's economic development overlay area. The second is an application to amend the previously approved plan development known as Sandia Town Park. The third item is an application to rezone plus or minus 311.81 acres identified by Alachua County parcel number 02571-001-000 and a portion of 02571-000-000 from agricultural to planned development to be known as Sandia Town Park Phase 2. After that, we will have topics from members from discussion, and then we will adjourn the meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Okay.
There's been a motion by Board Member Conrad and a second by Board Member Urched to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the agenda passes for, oh wait, I have to go to public comment. Sorry. First, we'll go to public comment. On the agenda, we will put the number on your screen for you to call in if you have input onto the agenda. Once you see the number, you may call in and raise your hand if you would like input on the agenda. There is a 30-second delay once that number's up there for you to call in. Not yet. While we're waiting for the number to show up on your screen, there are only 4 of us present tonight. Board member Gavin Johnson will not be joining us tonight.
Yeah, I'll just throw that around. I hate to, I'd rather do it now than 3 hours from now. But there's only 4 P and Z members, and the items on the agenda tonight are rather impactful to the city of Newberry as a whole. And so certainly, board member Wood, Gavin Johnson, thank you, could watch it later. However, I hate to make decisions, especially that we may not be unanimous on. But I just throw it out there that if he's not going to be able to join us at all tonight, I feel terrible. This be the second time that we table these items. If you guys, but I just would venture that the scope of the question in front of us tonight is probably worthy of having all of the board members here to weigh in on it. So that's just a thought.
Okay, my question to follow up with that is, it'll be recorded and board member Johnson can look at it. If he had if he didn't agree with something, I would assume if he agrees with everything, that wouldn't be a problem. But if he did not, would it be possible for him to have that added in for a no vote for later?
And Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think so. He would have to be here to publicly record his votes in the meeting. And I think the only problem with I think if all 4 of you are yays or all 4 of you are nays, then it's really not that big of a deal. The issue is whenever you're down to 2 people, if you got 2-2, and then what happens at that
Yeah.
point.
So historically, what we've done is ask the applicant, does he understand that 2 votes could kill the project or cause a non-recommendation? If he's okay with it, then we press on.
So just to add to both of the comments, or the maybe 3 or more comments that I've heard. First of all, to board member Woodcock's question, I would agree with the mayor. Perhaps the only involvement that board member Johnson could have would be to attend the city commission meeting and either offer himself as a possible witness, which I'm not necessarily sure he would fit that criteria, or he could make some comments when it presents itself for public comment as to his position. And then I do think that board member Conrad's comment is also accurate, that we have given the applicants, we've advised them in the past and let them make the decision. I would also just add to that, though, procedurally under our quasi-judicial procedures, that's perfectly appropriate, and or a motion could be entertained, and the board could just on its own determine to postpone or set it for another date certain. Would be options.
Okay. Yeah. So the number is now on your screen for public comment on the agenda. Once you have called in, if you'll raise your hand to let us know that you want to speak to the items, the actual agenda. There's still a 30-second delay. We've been discussing if any action will be taken since we're at a 4-member board right now. Are there any public comments? Okay, first we'll do a vote on the agenda and then we'll. Oh. Please come forward. When you're at the podium, please state your name.
Just on the approval of the agenda. And I'm just gonna address the fact that have a quorum, you don't have 5 members. Okay. Right on. Very good. Yeah, okay. Again, this is James Lee, and understand you have a quorum, but you don't have 5 members, and you could have a potential impasse. I think even if you have an impasse, you may want to push it back, push it on to the city commission. This is an important meeting. And I think that a lot of people have been waiting. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. So there's a motion and second on the floor. We'll do a roll call vote. Board Member Conrad.
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock.
Aye.
Aye. Board Member Urched. So the motion passes 4-0. Sorry. Sorry. If the applicant will step forward and your input on whether we table this or not.
We understand, that chair, we understand the having for the 5, we would like to see. Obviously, like any other public hearing, we reserve the right to. Okay. Again, Craig Brazier with CHW representing the application. Yes, we understand the being down 1 commissioner, but we would like to proceed there again. Like I said, just as in any other public hearing, we would like to reserve that ability to make a different decision down the road. But right now, we would like to present our materials because we do think it's an excellent project and benefit to the community, and so we would like to share that with you.
Thank you very much. Do any of the board members have any comment, given that the applicant wishes to move forward?
Just to clarify, whatever happens here, it'll still go before our city commission, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So at this time, we will stand for the Pledge of
Wait.
Allegiance. Yes, sir.
There was some. I didn't like the,
I'm sorry, I wasn't contradicting. If the P and Z votes no, then the applicant has the option to use that as an off ramp, right? And say, well, the P and Z voted no, or to go back and take the P and Z's comments. The applicant always has the right to keep advancing,
okay,
regardless of what the P and Z advice is. But generally speaking, when the P and Z advises no, the applicant goes back to the drawing board, changes something before they advance on. So that was.
I got, okay. Thank you, sir.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any announcements? These are short 2-minute style announcements. Okay, there's no old business. So we'll move on to new business and we will remove my mask so I can talk easier into the microphone, sorry. We will talk about our quasi judicial proceeding procedures. I will explain the procedure once unless somebody comes into this meeting, and then I'll explain them again. As the quasi judicial procedure will pertain to each of these 3 items, the applicant has already spoken to the chair and will be presenting a presentation on all 3 items since they are all linked together. First, the city attorney will read the ordinance resolution by title and number of the applicant's name into the record. The city attorney shall explain the rules regarding testimony, primarily that substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision. Then the chair will explain the procedure and the order of presentations. The applicant, staff, and all participants requesting to speak will be collectively sworn in at the beginning of the hearing by the city attorney or designee. The board will disclose any ex parte communications, and then there will be the presentation order. The staff will give us an overview on each of the 3 items. The applicant will present their application. Again, they're going to present on all 3 items and we'll refer to it for the following 2. Then we'll have the staff report and the recommendation. Following, there will be if there are any third-party interveners, they'll be allowed to comment. Then we'll have public comment. The applicant may then cross-examine any party interveners, which none have declared, may cross-examine, staff may cross-examine. Then the board, through the chair, may ask any questions of the staff, the applicant, or any of the participants. The final arguments are made by the applicant and then staff. And the city attorney will advise the board as to the applicable law and factual findings. There will be deliberations. There will be more public comment then too. And after deliberations, a vote will be taken to approve of conditions, continue, or deny the application. So with that, I will have our city attorney read the first item into the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the proposed ordinance number 2021-11, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment to the economic development overlay area as designated on the future land use plan map of the city of Newberry comprehensive plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.3184, subsections 2 and 3, Florida statutes, and in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 Florida statutes, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Are there any participants on Zoom other than the city attorney? Okay. Okay, so at this time, we need to swear in anybody who wishes to speak on these items. The way we've done it in the past is we can swear you all in at the beginning, and if anyone enters in, we can swear them in at that time. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. So Janine, are you swearing in or okay. So we're going to do this, everyone in the room. And then if any of the participants on Zoom want to be sworn in, they will be sworn in separately.
Okay, I'm going to Thank you. If you could then say that you will and state your name. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Brian Thomas, I do.
Chitana Mehta? Chitana Mehta, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
At
Thank
this point,
you.
does the board have any ex parte communication? Board Member Conrad? Board Member Woodcock? Board Member Urchin?
No.
And I have also spoken to the staff, but it will not influence my decision-making on these items. I know. So we will start with the staff overview.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the city attorney stated, this is ordinance 2021-11, also known as application CPA 21-04. It's an amendment to the future land use map to expand the existing economic development overlay area, or part of it, in the city of Newberry. Just some quick background. The purpose of the economic development overlay area was to provide a means to pursue an aggressive strategy to attract target industries to the city of Newberry. It also has secondary purposes to try to minimize urban sprawl, perhaps provide some workforce housing and even some alternative transportation options. And when the board is considering changes to the economic development overlay area, you want to look at the impacts on the environment and public health, compatibility with the surrounding area, cost and provision of public services and infrastructure, effect on the economy, and consistency, of course, with the objectives and policies of the comprehensive plan. This is the boundary of the existing economic development overlay area. It's approximately 235 acres. It also includes Champions Park. And then the proposal is to expand the economic development overlay by adding an additional roughly 279 acres to the economic development overlay. Normally, a change to the future land use map would be considered legislative and not quasi-judicial, but because this particular economic development overlay district encompasses lands owned almost exclusively by a single owner other than the city of Newberry, out of abundance of caution, chose to pursue it as a quasi-judicial proceeding so that the statute, the criteria for it would be competent substantial evidence presented. This is your existing economic development. It's unfortunately the colors are blended in the screen, but you can see on the southern end there, the economic development overlay area in blue. And then there is a second economic development overlay area, which is the large square over the center of downtown Newberry. Both of those are the city's economic development overlay areas. So the effect of the change would then be to, no, there we go. The effect of the change would be to expand the southern area, which would then ultimately encompass the land you see there. That's staff's overview, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We will proceed with the applicant's presentation. And just a reminder, this will cover all three items that will be referred to you in the next two.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I appreciate you letting me combine all of our items into one, because I think it's very important to see how they are interrelated and to see how that, most importantly, they take something that's already approved. They take these entitlements that are already approved, amend them to make them a little more compatible to the city of Newberry, and redistribute them over more acreage in order to make it more consistent with development that we see in Newberry. So with that, I will proceed. So yes, there are the three applications. As Brian just talked to you about, there's the amendment of the economic development overlay area, which does extend it to the south to take in additional properties owned by the Davis family. What this signifies is that this area is intended to be meant for uses that generate jobs, that generate economic growth for the city of Newberry. It's necessary to expand that because one of the uses that was originally intended from the designation of this boundary was light manufacturing. And with the construction of the ball fields, that kind of really changed what the adjacent uses should be and the best uses for those. So now by extending it south, we bring that use back and also allow some of these other economic generating uses to prosper in this area. Second is, and the other thing that expanding this boundary does is allow us to process a new plan development rezoning on the expansion area, which we will call phase 2 for the purposes of this presentation. So that's important because it's that second PD that allows those entitlements that are already approved under what we call the phase 1 PD. So that about 10 years ago, that was approved. So these entitlements are there. Phase 2 kind of changes those entitlements a little bit to uses that are a little more fitting and expands them over a larger area. And then that allows us to get to the third application, which is the existing approved PD, in which we will actually be reducing those entitlements to reflect the expansion over the entire property. So that's kind of how they're all interrelated. So I appreciate you letting me share all of them with you at one time. So the intent here is to, as I said, redistribute the entitlements over a larger land area, which allows us to better address market demands. And it also lets us take advantage of an asset that the city of Newberry has. So with Champion Park, that is a true asset that this project will and has always been intended to enhance. So this development will make tournaments more attractive to Champions Park. So people will be more likely to come in if there are other entertainment options, other housing options, or lodging options, I should say, right there adjacent to the facility. So the idea, and there again, it always has been, back when the land for the park was donated by the Davis family, back then PD was processed to capture the entitlements, which are still in place today and still effective today. Since that time, about a decade later, a different approach for that development is now seen as a better way to go for both the park and the city of Newberry. So that's one of the biggest things here is that this is a symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationship between the ball fields and the adjacent property. So one of the things that you'll see when we explain the changes in the entitlements is that previously there was a high number of multifamily units that were approved. This will decrease that number of multifamily units. It'll also decrease the number of commercial and retail that was allowed by about 70,000 square feet. It brings the light manufacturing back into play, which that was one of the intents of this overlay designation. And it also will expand some additional recreation opportunities. So here's the timeline. We began meeting with staff back in January, but I can assure you that our team, which this is a good time to point out who is here on our behalf as well. Mr. Robert Walpole is our president, CHW, Ryan Thompson, who is an AICP certified planner, and Mr. Stephen Davis, the property owner. We began working on concept plans and doing due diligence on this site probably 5 or 6 months in advance of January. So, midway through last year. And then by the beginning of this year, we got it to a point where we had a concept plan that we were all in agreement on and proud of, and began those conversations with your staff. We then submitted them at the end of January, all 3 of these applications. Since then, Brian Thomas has been pretty busy reviewing them amongst his other tasks, and brings us here to March 15th tonight at the Planning and Zoning Board. As things progress, we would go to the City Commission on April 12th. Then due to the fact that even though it may be being processed as a quasi-judicial item, this boundary adjustment is still required to go off, and because it's a component of the comp plan, it has to go off to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity and be reviewed, and then come back. So there's about a month there for that, and then we come back to the city commission again for a second reading. So that's how that timeline will play out.
We're gonna need to wait until the end of the presentation, please.
So there's a lot going here in the map. This is pretty much a repeat of the map that Brian just showed you, that kind of shows all the different overlays that are going on in this area. You have the urban service area, which is the blue line that's going around the farthest extremes of this map. You have the economic development overlay, which can be seen over the phase 1 in the ball fields right now. You have the transportation exception area, which is shown there in the yellow line. So this is just really to kind of give you an idea of the context of how this site fits into some of the city's other overlay areas. So, I mean, one thing to take away when you're looking at this map is that this is in an area intended for growth by the city of Newberry. And we've been involved with the city of Newberry through some planning efforts for a long time. And we know that this is consistent with a lot of those efforts that we have done, growing from the core out, not from the far eastern boundaries of the city back in. This is one, and by using development to enhance an asset that you already have in the ball field, this is consistent with some of the economic strategies we've worked with the city over the years. And then there you can see our site. So here's the site a little closer. So this will be a minor change, and it's even tougher to pick up on these screens, but you see the pink line as it goes there through the middle of the site. That just really gets adjusted to where it is now going around the entire site boundary. So if I go back and kind of show it again a couple of times, you see the pink line, and then it just moves south to take in all of this property and this project boundary. So that is the EDA overlay amendment ask. Now I'm kind of start moving into some of the other things that the other applications are going to achieve or accomplish. And we'll start with the land use. The land use in this entire area is agriculture, but because it's in some of those overlays, it allows you to process planned development. And so this is a pretty good map that shows currently there is already a PD, a planned development approved for approximately 150 acres there adjacent to Champions Park. That is approved and in effect today, and development plans could come in tomorrow that are consistent with that PD, and they would be processed for development. And so we'll go through what those entitlements are currently, then we'll go through what we're asking for over the entire property and show you how it's essentially the same. Some of the entitlements we feel are much more compatible with development in Newberry now. And like I said, it also the important component of bringing that light manufacturing or light industrial back into play. So this is the approved plan development. You can see it had 4 quadrants for development. So we are changing that map too. So the development style and the patterns that you see there are going to get changed. And I'm going to show you the concept plan, which we developed, and then how we back into this type of more bubble plan. But I'll show you kind of like the long-term view. So what these plans here tonight lead to. So there on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the entitlements that are currently approved. So currently there are 670 multifamily residential units, 200 townhome units, 30 single family. And that was a number, nowadays we feel was a little low. So we felt that the single family approach here was a little underrepresented. There's 370,000 square feet of commercial retail, non-residential uses that are currently approved, and 600 hotel rooms. So that is what could be built on that 150 acres today. That's a pretty intense development on 150 acres, but it's approved and it's still effective. So those entitlements are there. So that's kind of the approach here, is to spread that out. Let's have some development that's a little less intense from a bigger picture and make it more compatible. And again, these PDs will be over another 20-year time period. So this is not something that development starts tomorrow and it's all there a year from now. This is a long-term project. This is development that will be phased in and come in over time. Like I said, these PDs are good for 20 years. So this is not something that's going to bring about immediate drastic change. It's going to be hopefully a steady, constant growth. So if we go back and look here, so this again is where that PD is located today on this property. And our goal is to take those entitlements that are now up in that 150 acres and spread it out over the entire 460 acre site and amend those entitlements a little bit to development that is a little more compatible, like I keep saying, for the city of Newberry. So that's the idea there. So we're going from that top corner, spreading it out all over 460 acres, and also going to bring in some other new and exciting uses that we think even more than just providing commercial and retail options for visitors of the park, also bringing in some other recreational opportunities that go hand in hand and should be also very supportive of your existing use. So here's the concept plan. So I'll spend a few minutes going over the concept plan that we've come up with. And there again, we take this concept plan and work backwards really into the bubble plans and the PD plans that you're going to see with each of the rezonings that we're really talking about approval for tonight. So up in the, and I don't think, yeah, my pointer's not going to show up on the screen, but up in the left hand, the northwest corner there, that is where the multifamily housing is located. So there again, it went from 670 to about 350 or 360 units. So quite a drastic reduction. Whereas previously, most all of the residential we were proposing was in multifamily form. This time it's not. It's a much smaller fraction of it. They're also along Northwest 30th on the other side of the main entrance there. So you can see the main spine road that runs down through there, and that's intended to be a boulevard style road with a planted median and travel lanes on each side. And we've also taken into consideration the city's desire to have some sort of shuttle that runs from the downtown area to some of these other activity centers. That roadway will accommodate that. So there along Northwest 30th on the most northern end is more of a traditional retail style development where you have an anchor with some supporting uses on the side and then maybe an out parcel or two. Then behind that, when you get in and we start making a more direct connection, pedestrian connection to the ball fields so that people can come back and forth safely without a car. And they may be staying in the hotels and maybe going over there for dinner or a movie or whatever uses end up being in there. We wanted to bring and be able to draw them in a safe manner, without them having to get in and out of their car just to drive around, go to the ball fields. So the style of development we're looking at there is more of a town center, a main street, an open air mall type of development, which if you've been to anything like that down maybe the Villages, maybe Butler Plaza, maybe St. John's Town Center, something to that effect. Obviously not to that scale, but to that development style, kind of that Main Street feel with some parking along the street and shops that front a big pedestrian sidewalk. Then you see that we did include some single family residential in that northern portion as well. The majority of the single family is going to be in the southern portion, what we be calling the phase 2. There's a couple of different areas, as well as another area of townhomes. They're separating some of the recreational uses from the single family. And then the manufacturing would be down in the southeast corner. And an extension just below. So we kind of right there in the center of the development, one of the things, and we know that one of the things that Newberry prides itself on is, its recreational activities and the recreation opportunities that it offers. So kind of at the center of this design is the recreational features. We have a big green open space, which will serve as park and recreation. We don't know exactly the type of features that'll go in there yet. This is very conceptual in nature at this point. But one of the key things is that a new championship stadium for Champions Park will be built and placed on this property. And then there to the east of the new championship stadium are also 2 indoor arena facilities. which are intended for a specific use at this time, but they will also have other uses moving forward. And then there's parking. The gray there you see just to the south of that is parking for the recreational uses and with the opportunity for a parking garage if necessary in the future. Then there along the roadway or along the railroad track, actually, that kind of pie wedge looking piece you see there is intended to be like a golf driving range of some sort, whether it's a brand name or not. But this is the concept plan that we spent months working on. And you can also see over here on the eastern portion, you see a couple of features there again, you can see, but you see a couple of natural depressional features that we will preserve and also provide some additional buffering around those. So we have a healthy amount of open space on here once you take into consideration all the stormwater areas you see. And these stormwaters are somewhat accurate. I mean, we have not done full drainage analysis or anything to that level, but we have looked at the soils and we have looked at the drainage divides and the topography and the amount that we would need. So there's been a lot of detailed planning go into what we're bringing before you today. So now I'll start showing you how this concept plan really backs into the two PD zoning plans that we're putting in front of you. So there is the phase one, the 150 acres that is currently approved. And then that is the plan that we're presenting this evening. So you can see that's a little bit different from the 4 quadrants that we previously had or that's currently approved in the PD. We have the main road, which we can continue on through down to 46 and through the phase 2. And we essentially have a residential side and a mixed use commercial retail side. And then here we have the second phase PD, which includes single family, some townhomes, the recreational uses, and then the light manufacturing down in the southeast corner. And the PD plan that leads to that looks like this. So a continuation of the spine road, development area A there, which is focused on single family, and then C, which is a little more mixed use in nature. It has your recreation and it has some of your townhome and smaller lot single family. And then development area D is the light manufacturing and light industrial. So that's how the PD plans that we're presenting tonight lead to this concept plan. And that is there again, that's why it was important for me to show you all this cohesively and together, because they all lead, all 3 of these applications lead to this mixed use project. So here we take a look at the entitlements. And so from what is already approved, and we kind of talked about it briefly, there's 270 less multifamily units. So it's a reduction of 270 apartments, a reduction of 70,000 non-residential from commercial and retail standpoint, and a reduction of 200 hotel rooms. So by not only reducing the entitlements from those entitlements from phase 1, they also get spread out over a larger area, which in the long run, in a big picture sense, makes it much less intense than what's approved today. Now we do increase the number of single family, and there'll be 700. And I think overall, when you compare overall residential units from phase 1 to what we're proposing now, there's about a net 200 gain. So, you know, there's a large number of the residential that's being proposed today already approved. The sports arenas, those total up to 150,000 square feet. There's also the 1,000-seat championship stadium that's going to be extension of Champions Park. And then the light manufacturing there again, which is one of the main intents of that economic development overlay area from the first place. And we're bringing that really back into play now. So again, we've already talked about how the park will benefit this project. This project benefits the park. You know, there's kind of like this cyclical beneficial relationship. There are also a lot of elements to this project which will benefit the community at large, and the benefits will go beyond just the project. So one is the stadium. You know, there again, that's a direct improvement. I believe it's some feedback that the city's been getting about tournaments at the stadium is that, you know, a championship stadium would really put it into the next tier. And so that will be included on this project, or at the area for it would be included on this project. We will be making enhancements to the existing entrance to Champion Stadium because it's going to provide a direct connection. We will be connecting to that. So we want all the entrances and all the access points for this project to have a similar high standard to them. So there will be some improvements made to the current entrance and parking area. Space for a water tower will be donated on this project. And that is strategically located on one of the highest points on this property and in the area. So the benefits of that extend far beyond this project. That will help development and help growth and help the city of Newberry for years to come in this part of the city. We've already met with FDOT as part of our due diligence, just so you know. So we've talked to them about things, you know, roadway improvements. And of course, one thing that they talk about are the improvements for 30th and 46th, where we intersect 2741. So those improvements have come, and there will also be improvements further back to the west for each one of those roadways. And then along with the roadway improvements, water and sewer infrastructure will be extended to this site. There again, not providing on the development opportunities here, but for adjacent properties and for areas that the city wants to grow and intends to grow in the future. The extension of this infrastructure will go a long way in assisting and promoting that type of natural growth. And then they're just pointing out where some of the previous features that we already talked about are located in relation to all of these community benefits. So that is how all three of these applications fit together and assist each other and all lead to this one cohesive mixed use development. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have now. I'll be happy to come back and answer any questions as we move through the items again with Brian separately. However you want to do that, that's completely up to you, and we're flexible.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll have time for the board ask questions in a little bit.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you. And now we'll move to the staff presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we went through all this. Basically, the last part left is staff recommendations. Is recommend approval of ordinance 2021-11 to the city commission. I think that the project overall has merit and is a good project for the city, and so we would like to see the economic development overlay area expanded.
Okay, thank you very much. We, at this point, would be where the third-party intervener would come in, but there is no third-party intervener. So we'll move to public comment. The phone number is on your screen for those of you watching through Zoom or YouTube. If you have any comments on this item, this is about the economic development overlay adjustment. You can call in, and when you get into the meeting, please press *9 to raise your hand, and we will acknowledge you so that you can make any comments you may have. If there's anyone in the room who would like to make comments, if you'll come up to the podium while we're waiting for the 30 seconds delay. You have more than 30 seconds, of course, to comment. Please state your name again.
James Lee. There's a lot of things going on in Newberry. It seems like the farther south quadrant of our city has been ignored. Obviously, we've got Country Way going on, but we started something at Champions Park and kind of dropped the ball for a decade. Time to do something with this, finish up what we started. I'd like for you to push this through to the city commission and get it approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Janine, is there anyone on Zoom? Okay. At this point, the applicant may cross-examine. Oh, wait, yes, ma'am, come forward, sorry. I apologize, I'm trying to watch like so many things.
I understand. Good evening. I'm Tina Certain, and I come as a member of the Electric County School Board. And I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time for me to speak. I know the three items were combined into one, so I guess I'll just come and speak now for this one, to this one item. It's a very exciting project. Sounds huge, like the town center and the economic development overlay. Very happy to see the growth in the area because any growth in the county increases the tax base for the city of Newberry as well as Alachua County as an overall whole. And that's a good thing. But I came today to share, as I did with you all at the last meeting that we had, the concern that we have, or the little dilemma that we're dealing with at the school district. Growth is good. I sat over there and I didn't get a packet that had the total number of homes, single family, multifamily, but I did hear 700 homes were proposed. I heard that number 700. And so just so to give you an idea of why I stood up, 700 homes would estimate to generate about 98 seats at the elementary level. It would then, as well as at the middle school level, we think about 42 students, in high school, 56 students. Now, and I left out in a rush today, I'm sorry. The numbers, so I'll take my mask off so I can speak a little bit clearer. 700 homes is estimated to generate about 98 elementary students, 42 middle school students, and 56 high school students. Yeah, so you're welcome. That's a little bit significant, especially at the elementary level, because as you all know, Newberry Elementary is at capacity. It's K-4 now. The fifth graders are at Oakview. And so any development that's approved will indeed have an impact on the schools because it'll generate additional seats. And right now, at this point, we do have the capital projects that we have ongoing based on the half-cent sales tax, but we don't have the funding to build a new elementary school. And there is a wing that's in the hopper to be built at the middle school at Oakview within the next 5 years. But, so just to let you guys know, we'll be coming out back with a revision for our interlocal agreement to possibly increase. We're looking at and talking about as a board, increasing the number of concurrency districts from 3 back up to at least 8. I think there were 9 in the past. Waldo was one, but there is no Waldo Elementary anymore. So it will likely be 9. But I'd just like for you all to really share with the folks that are coming in to build and to consider that right now, any impact and any additional housing units that would have on the school district. And it's at a situation where we're really just not able to, right now, we don't even see our way clear of that. But I did want to share that with you all. Thank you for this.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, I want to, it's not a question for you, Ms.
Okay,
Certain. I
I'm gonna get
appreciate
back
you
to my
being
seat.
here. But I have a question for Rich.
Oh.
What are you? You just, no, he's right there. No, not Ricky, Rich. So the city attorney. And my question is about the quasi judicial, because certainly Ms. Certain can be considered an expert on school numbers and those kinds of things. But our applicant wasn't given advanced notice of that expert testimony being offered. And the numbers that were given there didn't quite represent what the presentation, because there's only an increase of 200. So they've already got rights for that 700 number. That's already done. That's approved. So I want to make sure we guide the P and Z board correctly when it comes to the expert testimony mark for quasi judicial, and certainly give the applicant a fair shot at cross-examining. I'm not meaning to cross-examine the person, but just addressing those numbers. Rich, can you give us a little bit of advice here? Because that sounded a lot like expert testimony in public comments.
Yes, certainly, Mr. Mayor, what I would recommend, as far as the committee members' deliberation, I'll give you a vague standard, but it's a standard we use all the time. The committee members should give it its weight. It doesn't necessarily mean that the testimony we just heard in public comment must be excluded or admitted into evidence. The committee can give it its weight that they feel is appropriate. You know, we are in quasi judicial, so we are not governed by the strict rules of evidence that we would otherwise have in a court of law. We do have, as part of the procedure, the ability or the opportunity for persons to provide public comment, and in that regard, nobody is excluded from that process. The concern that we would have from the city standpoint is to make sure, as Mr. Mayor has pointed out, that the applicant does have due process and therefore an ability to cross-examine. So what I would suggest here is that if the applicant is not necessarily prepared to address the comments that we just heard in public comment, they do have the ability to also ask for a continuance of the matter. But again, I would say that it is public comment, and so the committee should just give it its weight. If that clears it up, then we can move forward. If anybody has questions based on some of the comments I just made, then let's address them right now.
Okay, thank you, Rich. And Janine keeps pointing down, but I do not know what this symbol means, so I'm sorry. Okay, all right. So we got a member of public. Let's finish this line before we.
Okay, yeah, I just, Craig Brazier, CSW, representing the application, just wanted to follow up on the line of reasoning that Mayor was going down there.
I'm sorry, I apologize. So you're going to be given the opportunity in quasi judicial to cross-examine.
Okay.
So now that we have the clarification of the expert testimony and the numbers, and maybe if Ms. Certain, if you have a formula that you're using, I believe the net was 200. So maybe you could recalculate the impact on 200 instead of 700, and then maybe we could get into a ballpark. But whatever you're about to say, I apologize. Bring it back in cross-examination.
Is that for public comment? Okay.
If Janine kept how much time?
You still have time left on your 3 minutes, so you can come forward.
James Lee again. Mr. Mayor and distinguished member and chair, may I ask a question you through the mayor? Maybe the mayor could tell us how many students have already been bused from other areas of Newberry, from Newberry to Newberry, from the other county, part of the county to Newberry right now. Is it more than, say, 200 students? Maybe kind of an offset. Thank you.
You can answer it. I mean,
The only reason that I come close, and I do not stand firmly on these numbers, but I know that in our conversations with law enforcement and how much the city of Newberry pays for the school resource officers, only about 40% to 45% of the populations of the 3 schools in Newberry aren't Newberry residents. They're from other places that were in the MSTU. So about 40 to 45% of the are not Newberry. So Archer is bused to Newberry. Tioga is bused to Newberry right now. So, and again, I'm only aware of these numbers through our conversations with school resource officers, because we've had to get, so my numbers are about 2 years old. So right now, actually, the city of Newberry pays almost the full freight for school resource officers. And that was a source of tension between us and ASO, because they were double dipping. They were getting the MSTU from Archer. We were paying again for that service. All of the kids from Tioga. So about 40%, I would say, is a fairly confident number of kids that are sitting in Newberry schools are not Newberry residents.
May I further ask, Mr. Mayor, what's the total student population from kindergarten to high school, 12th grade? Did you have a guesstimation?
We don't want to get into a cross-examination of the
Well,
information.
I'm not,
I understand that. So this will be the last question, because this is time for public comment.
understand.
Um,
I was trying to give gravity to the situation. So if even if 1/3 or 1/4 of those students come from other areas of the county, then the problem is the school board, not Newberry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Do we have, if the caller can say their name?
Yes, my name is Chetna Mehta, and I'm here on behalf of Devi Temple. We are a small church just off of County Road 45. And I just had a couple of questions. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and the development sounds really very exciting. I had a couple of questions. One was, I think you mentioned that Spine Road will eventually meet up with State Road 45. And I was wondering was it going to be at the north end or the south end? And then the other question was, do you know what kind of the light manufacturing and the light industrial, can you give me some examples of what might come into that area?
We will make sure that those questions get, that the applicant responds to those questions for you. Are there any other public comments on Zoom? Okay, so at this time, we're going to move, the applicant can cross-examine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Craig Brazier with CHW. I don't necessarily have cross-examination in the sense of asking. Is it on? It's green. Okay. Oh, okay. Is that better? All right. So yeah, not that I'm cross-examining, I just want to clarify. And then if I need to come back and clarify anything else. So the exact number, so I do want to apologize, 200 was counting a reduction in the hotel rooms as well. So you take that out and it's over 400 net increase, but that is both single family and multifamily. So it's gonna affect the straight line equation, you know. And I've chatted with the school board representative and she has given me a name. We're more than happy to work with folks in facilities as this project goes forward. The other thing I want to clarify so that the number is not 700 that the impact should be measured on, and nor is that impact all come at once. There again, this is spread out over a 20-year period of time for the life of this PD. And as we all know, development cycles, economic cycles come and go. We hope that it's a 20-year, type time frame. To touch on the question that was just asked by the citizen, there was no connection for our spine road. There was no mention of the connection going to State Road 45. The spine road will connect Southwest 30th Avenue to Southwest 46th Avenue. So that's about approximately 1 mile north to south there. An example of the light industrial, light manufacturing. You don't want to be specific because this can always change. It's not there yet, but I think what was always intended there was to be a rice plant, a type of food processing facility. So that is what was really still driving the light manufacturing, light industrial designation. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but that's what I wanted to respond to at this time.
There are no party interveners for cross-examination. So, oh, sorry.
I can read on the microphone. There we go. My name is Stephen Davis. Excuse me. One point I wanted to make regarding the schools. One thing that wasn't discussed is these entitlements have been in place for 10 years. We've had several other single-family developments that have come on since then that are also adding children to our school system. It just doesn't seem fair to me that I've had entitlements in place for this long, and yet I could be frozen out because I just didn't get there as quick as some others did. So I think we've tried to give you a plan that's a lot less intense than it was originally. And I think we tried to do it with everyone in mind, from the buffering of the single family against the single family to the west, keep commercial property away from single family property, hold most of the recreational area on the city's other 40 acres that would need to be donated back for this ultimate development to go together. So I just wanted to make the point of how long we have had entitlements in place and, take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the staff can cross-examine at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Don't really have any cross-examination, but I just wanted to, I did a quick and dirty calculation. It's not quite so easy as just saying, if you have X number of more single family or X number of more units, the school board uses different factors for concurrency calculation. So doing a quick and dirty between what the entitlements exist already on the property versus what the entitlements would be if you added the additional 279 acres with the additional entitlements, would add roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 65 elementary school students, again, over 20-year period. So 30 to 35 students for middle school and roughly 50 students to the high school. And again, so that would be anticipated to be over a 20-year period as the entire development build out occurs. And those again are just guesses because we don't know the rate of which the build out's actually going to occur. But it's when you look at what they could already do and haven't done yet versus what they're asking for, it's a much smaller number than if you just look at the total number that they'd be able to. That number looks a little bit more large in the content without the context of they could already do the majority of that. Is what the point I'm trying to get to. So that's all.
Thank you very much. At this time, the board can ask any questions of any party at this time. Who wants to go first? You are not a board member.
And
It's question time.
it's
too.
question time,
Yes.
right? Ryan, can you, and maybe this is better to the applicant, I'll pose the question and whoever wants to take a shot at it can come up. This project to me seems like an economic development project with residential attached to it. Whereas some of the other developments are residential projects with a little bit of commercial attached to it. One of our goals has been this light manufacturing. This rice factory caused an uproar of excitement I don't even want to tell you how many years ago. And so to hear it back on the table, I mean, this really is jobs. Have we or the applicant done any study on the job impact that we're talking? I mean, we're talking about hotels. We're talking about covered indoor arenas. I can tell you right now that with a school board member in the room, if Newberry has 2 covered arenas, there's going to be a waiting list from every school around to come in and try to use those practice fields because, in Florida, we are often rained out. The Champions ballpark has been a source of contention since that park was built, not having a championship stadium. You could talk to the park operator and he talks about how much more he could do with that park if he had a championship stadium there. I mean, do we have any? I know we're early in this process and we're just coming with an already approved project and asking to shift it some, but have we done any economic study? And maybe this is better for the applicants. I mean, whoever has the best opportunity to give us some job numbers, that kind of a thing, anything for us to chew on.
Mr. Mayor, I'll start. I don't have, we haven't done those numbers or run that potential study yet, but I can tell you that in 2008, when the rice plant was first proposed, I actually was working with the Regional Planning Council and helped secure a $3 million loan from the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And to my memory, there were several hundred jobs just for the rice plant involved. And so for $3 million, you have to produce quite a few jobs. And I remember it was several hundred. I don't remember the exact number, somewhere I think in the 400 or 500 range.
Okay.
But as to then the additional potential of the sports arenas, all the litany of commercial potential that's there, we'd have to take each one of those and kind of draw up a hypothetical and then come back with some numbers. It could be done.
Okay. Mr. Davis, if you want to add.
Mr. Thomas is right. We haven't done an intense study of it yet. I think it would be in excess of that. I mean, you don't have these indoor stadiums. You don't just have a game once a week and it's empty the rest of the week. It takes maintenance, it's staff and supervision. I would like to add, and it hasn't been mentioned, that it was my vision to have the baseball park brought up to where we intended it to be in the first place. So part of what we're proposing to do is pave the road and the parking in the park itself so that it fits in with what the rest of we're trying to do and brings the park up to, quite frankly, where we wanted it to be originally, and just didn't ask for enough money from the county. Okay. And since then, unfortunately, we've had some park managers of the baseball park that, didn't hit it like they should have. I recently moved back out to the Archer area, and I've seen a lot more activity at the park lately than I have in a long time. So I'm pleased to see that, and I think we're moving in the right direction finally. But there will be a lot of jobs that come with the manufacturing facility, where it's going to be rice or healthy foods. It will be something in that arena that we can all be proud of. And additionally, we're trying to use a substantial portion, if not majority portion, of green energy in this development. And I'm not talking solar, and I'm not talking 150-foot wind turbines. I'm talking micro wind turbines that could fit on top of buildings and basically not be seen. So we've got some big plans for this, and hope you guys share our vision.
Thank you very much. Any other questions by the board? Board Member Conrad?
This has to go for state. In a long time.
Madam Chair, it's not a development of regional impact. Anything that's considered a large scale, either land use change or future land use change, or if you're making a change to your future land use map that would be considered large scale, then it has to go to the state for review. And so because of this, the scope of the change, it would go before the state for their expedited review process.
Trying to get it straight in my mind, is this a reduction or is this an increase? It's being told us that this is a reduction from the entitlement. Regulations about calling it entitlement. But I see in all the analysis of the impact on number of trips, the amount of water, the amount of sewer, pages 92 through 97. They all have the conclusion that the net development of this site will result in theoretical impact of the sanitary facility. The net development potential of this site will result in the use of the site sanitary sewer and water, sewer impact that can be put on the highway. So if we're reducing the number of units, why in each case are we increasing the demand?
Madam Chair, there is a net reduction in certain types of housing and a net increase in other types of housing when you add phase two. So there is a reduction and a redistribution from what's considered phase one, the 148 acres that have the existing entitlements. Some of those entitlements are being shifted down to phase two, as well as some additional entitlements being added for phase two. So the net effect is an overall increase, not just in residential housing, but also in the light manufacturing and the stadium and the arenas.
Could we say that we're trading hotel rooms for residential units?
Yeah.
Yeah, very gracious. Yeah, so yeah, I don't think it's, Madam Chair, I don't think that we can make it a straight line equation as such, because as Mr. Thomas said, one of the larger factors that we're bringing back into play here is 550,000 square feet of light manufacturing and light industry. So, I mean, if you do look apples to apples, oranges, retail and commercial is coming down by 70,000 square feet. The number of multifamily units. So if anything, you're trading, if you want to look and kind of see, I'm trading this for this, I'm trading a lot of multifamily for some additional single family. That's one of the most straight line equations that I think you could say. And then on top of that, like I said, you have a lot of job creating, economic growth use and light manufacturing, light industrial coming back into play and coming into all these calculations. And there again, none of these impacts occur all at once. This is at maximum development potential. This is at build out that all of those calculations are based. And with those impacts, also kind of infrastructure.
Development is, this is actually development, it will increase the impact. Water, sewer, electric, traffic, food. Don't want to oversell that we're going from 900 to 700, therefore we're just now we're reducing the amount of commercial. Our city's vision is to increase commercial, reduce the amount of residential. This is CHW knows that you help us develop our city's vision. We want to bring in the light industrial. I see this as very heavy on more residential, light and less commercial. Light industrial, talking about the rice plant. I'd like to hear more about the rice plant. There's the guy that was going to start the rice plant. I haven't had any ex parte communication with him. As far as I knew, he was retired and not planning on doing it. something that is a possibility, or you just using that as an example of light manufacturing?
I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn for Mr. Raymond, but I believe that is one of the things that is driving it, absolutely, that use that has been on the table for quite some time. But that is what's driving the inclusion of that area. And we're dedicating a very significant portion of the site and strategically locating it where we're putting it along the transportation infrastructure there to make the most use of it. And I would say that the amount dedicated to that area would go far beyond and support more than just that one use. So the intent is that that will create some synergy and then produce other similar or complementary uses in that area. And I also, that's my take on the light manufacturing. Going back to the commercial, and yes, we were at CHW part of that, and I tried to allude to that earlier with the organic growth coming from the center out, but with commercial, we work with a lot of commercial developers and a lot of end users, and we all know that it would take an enormous amount of success from that ballpark to support these residential uses or these non-residential uses as well. When they come to town, yeah, they're going to look at that, but that can go away rather quickly, whereas rooftops don't. So they have a relationship that works hand in hand. The rooftop drives the interest in that commercial. Granted, it will be assisted by the ballpark, and like I said, we hope that we get this circular beneficial cycle where the ballpark benefits the development brings in more use of the ballpark, but it's also going to take rooftops and residential and permanent folks in place to garner a lot of interest from a lot of people. That's why there's balance, and there's a lot of public land to it.
And can I continue, Madam Chair? I would agree with you that some commercial like Publix goes by rooftop. Light industrial often wants to be out away from residential areas, and rooftops would be something that would not bring light industrial to this area because of the noise and that kind of stuff. And when we originally looked at that as a rice plant, it was a remote area, far from anything else. And before we even thought of the ball field, I believe, if I remember. But anyway, I'd like to hear more about, is there actually somebody you have in mind that's going to go here, or are you just saying you're going to set aside this land for some kind of light industry? So there's, Dr. John Atkinson is still involved. He's still around. I talk to him just about every day. And he's working feverishly to pull together his plans for the light industrial plant. Whatever it is we're going to end up producing there, it may start out with an improved flour. It's more healthy for us. He's got several things in mind. I wouldn't say a rice plant is probably where we're headed, but certainly a healthy nutritional foods. And it's not just a manufacturing plant we're looking at there, Mr. Conrad. It's also research facilities, office research, clinical studies, 2 or 3 other buildings that Dr. Atkinson needs there, so that not only can we produce the food, but he can do the clinical studies and analysis so we can continue to improve on what we do there. And then the facilities may expand. We've got, I think we planned what, 40 acres there, is there 40 acres of light manufacturing, and right now Dr. Atkinson's only going to take up probably less than 20 of that. Okay, so there's some room to the west. This plant would be up against the railroad track. And that would leave 20 acres to the west. And then we have a buffer between, the single family from there. We try to look at it all and bring it all into play. And so, yes, Dr. Atkinson is still involved. He's very excited. Okay, well, I'm very encouraged to hear that. That's kind of a game changer for me. That keeps the railroad active, which we're about to lose the railroad if we don't get another customer out here. So I like your. Okay, well, great.
The back crossing, there's sand in the railroad tracks, so I can tell it's been a while since they've been through there.
Well, they shut down the coal plant in Crystal River, so the coal train quit coming through. But anyway, that's very interesting. Thank you for straightening me out on that. The school impact, you put some numbers, page 97 of the packet. It said there would be 64 elementary students, 24 middle school students, 28 high school students. Ms. Certain, her numbers were about double those numbers. So anyway, I consider her an expert and I consider you an expert. So between the two experts, before we go to the commission, maybe we could get the formula straightened out for school impact.
Do you have any questions about the overlay, since that's what we're gonna vote on first?
Yeah, we're not going to vote them all at once.
No, sir.
Well, I assume once we assume one of them, we vote on one of them, but the other ones would be.
I did too.
Go right
Okay.
through.
I thought that was the whole thing.
We're still gonna have to go through the procedure, was my understanding for they won't give the same presentations, but staff will be given two separate additional presentations.
It would just be odd to go yes on one.
Right.
Yeah, okay, I got you, yeah. I want to just, Madam Chair, I'd like to just make a comment. On the, a great presentation, good ideas. And of course, we're all concerned about the school situation because, you know, I have in Newberry as in Archer, which Mr. Davis, you know how that works with Archer. And, you know, I'm a family, my parents, myself, my children and my grandchildren attended Newberry Elementary. We never had middle school. We went K through 6 with me. And I had 20, I graduated, I'll tell you how old I am. I graduated in 1960 and there were 20 people in my graduating class. And we were from Archer and Newberry. So we've grown a lot since then. But I was just thinking about what you were saying, the light industry. I can see how it's certain that if we work with the school board at the beginning, at the development, vocational school training for our kids that would just be an incredible situation. It's close to their school, 10-minute drive for the high school. And you know, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 4 years, they could get vocational training in some of this light industry. So I'm just saying, can you keep that in mind? I think that could be a real positive for our schools.
Maybe we can transport the kids on the
We could. Those trains don't belong to CSX. Well, okay. Thank you.
Mayor Conrad, I misunderstood that we were voting on these separately and discussing them separately after
Okay.
staff. So if you have more questions, please continue.
Okay, I have one more. There's been a lot of discussion, Brian, about entitlements. You know, that we had the 900 units approved and we have entitlements to water, sewer, school. I don't think you're entitled until you have a development order to any reservation of any capacity or anything. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct. They're referred to as entitlements based on what you have in your zoning category, what's approved for that. But in reality, you're entitled to it if it's available. That's the caveat. And so as far as concurrency or capacity goes, the underlying assumption, and not just assumption, but the reality is that you may have entitlements up to X, but if the city doesn't actually have capacity available at the time you go to develop, then you would not be able to develop to that. And so that's why you can approve something like this. It's going to have a substantial impact on water, wastewater, et cetera, in advance of actually having that capacity, because it's something that, in theory, I mean, the original entitlements were passed 13 years ago or 20 years ago. And 10, get my time on, it's getting late. 10 years ago and not acted upon. And it had no effect on the city. If the entitlements were actually reserved, those capacities were reserved at the time of zoning, then you would have all of that capacity reserved and unusable by other developments along the way. And so this doesn't reserve anything. It entitles you to it if you have it available at the time of development. And so that's definitely a distinction that we need to understand is if that was the case, you would never be able to approve anything in advance of actually having the capacity, because if you had to have it the moment you approved zoning, which gave you the entitlements, almost no community would ever have that. And so you're absolutely right. You don't reserve capacity at that time. You only reserve capacity for commercial when the site plan comes in, or for residential when each plat for each residential phase comes in. At the point where they get their plat, then it reserves capacity. Same with the school board for school board calculations. They don't reserve capacity. I mean, we try to keep them abreast of what's going on in advance, but they don't actually reserve capacity until that plat is brought in and recorded.
Okay, and I love this development. I think it's great. I'm looking very favorably at it, and I don't need to bring up negative things, but I think we've kind of oversold it, and I hope when we pitch it to the commission, we can undersell a little bit. I think in reading the package, it sounded like we're taking some entitlements we already have, we're reducing them and then spreading them over 2 lots. Really, you don't already have those entitlements, because until you get a development order, you're not entitled to anything. We have a lot of developments out there that have never been developed, and they've sat there and their 10 years expired and they go away. So there's no entitlement. This is a great plan, but let's not sell it as we're taking our entitlements and transferring them. And let's not sell it as a big reduction in the density of this thing, because when it comes down to the impact on the community, it's an increase. So I think we need to be honest with the commission so they understand what they're approving. And everything in here is accurate, but you have to really read the fine print to say, this is not a reduction in something you've already promised us. We haven't promised you anything because you don't have a development. We've just said conceptually, this looks good to us. But that being said, I think it's a great plan and all that.
Board Member Ojed.
So my question, thank you for a great presentation. And thank you for working diligently with our city and staff to present this. Couple questions. When it comes to these homes, do we have any idea who the developer will be? Because my question is, these tract homes are becoming, I guess, as a personal preference. I mean, I live in a tract home, and I'm starting to see the nuisance in tract homes and why they're so difficult. Is there another? Do we know if it's like DR Horton? Do we know if these homes that are planned development, is these are another set of tract homes? Are they Tommy Williams style, or they're individually designed?
Madam Chair,
Is that a bad question?
before anybody answers that question, I just want to check with Rich, because we got in a world of trouble a few years ago in a quasi judicial of mixing. As long as the homes are built to Florida builder standards, that's not in front of us tonight to try to ask who's building the home.
So that's a bad question. That's all you had to say.
Okay, all right. Well, if you voluntarily withdraw, then Rich, you don't need to.
That's all you
chime
had
in.
to say. I was
Okay.
not aware that could get us in any kind, so I retract that. So don't, sorry.
Well, also, Member Urchin, I don't have my gavel with me. The chair does, so I'll defer to her to bring the hammer down on you. I won't do it.
Thank you so much for that too.
So my biggest stress obviously is the school issues. Is there I'm looking at what kind of funding is needed for the schools. Because Newberry, without a doubt, whether we vote no, whether we vote yes, the schools are being impacted. And at this point, has the city, have we discussed what can be done to alleviate the stress on the city, on the city schools? Is that another illegal move?
Well, you're talking about school board level funding, and that would be a question that you would go and ask at the school board
Okay,
meeting about
so
whether
never
they
mind on
want.
that, then I'll keep
We,
moving.
we can't play in their puddle. And so they'll talk about impact fees and taxes and those kinds of things, but we can't tie our funding to school boards or those.
Well, all right, so without that, with us voting on this tonight and going to the commission, can amendments be, is this something that is set in stone, like, hey, this is how it's gonna be? Can amendments be added later on saying, hey, we changed our minds, we want to do something else?
That's a good question.
I'm one out of three, geez. I'm batting
Maybe.
horribly today.
And I think the question is to Brian, perhaps, right? If they want to amend it, they have to come back to a process. Brian, take it.
Madam Chair, so it depends on what point of the process the amendments are presented. Anytime before the enactment of any of these ordinances, amendments could be made, of course. And then once these ordinances are enacted by the commission, then it would take a mutual agreement between the two parties to make further amendments and bring forth another ordinance for that amendment. So kind of like they're doing now for what's they're referring to as phase one. You know, that's a plan development that's already approved and on the books. They're asking for some amendments to it. So the ordinance is presented to make those amendments. And so once the economic development overlay and then the phase one and then phase two rezonings are complete, it would take another ordinance to come in and present amendments. It can be amended though. It definitely can be amended. It's just a process.
All right, and then my other question is towards staff. But then again, this might get shot down, so I go 1 for 4. But besides utility, my concern is the traffic situation on 27. It is not a very friendly road as it stands now. And I feel like adding more stress to that, even though that is a state road. Am I illegal here? Oh, okay. Okay. Even though that's a state road, what I'm trying to find if there was in any of these pages where the traffic study was done per se on what kind of impact this would have on US 27. Because right now, the majority of the traffic, if we're looking at this map, is more towards the north of town. Now we're going to see a huge impact on the south of town. What's that traffic looking like for Newberry and potentially Archer Road?
There again, Greg Frazier. There again, we have had our preliminary conversations. We've worked out a methodology with FDOT. The detailed traffic study will come when we begin moving forward with development. But for this project, all of the development will be looked at holistically. And it is our intent and our approach to, at this point, based on the law that we have planned moving forward, is that transportation improvements will be made on the front end. So that's kind of getting to the point in order for safety, the intersections at Southwest 30th Ave.
Yeah, it's a horrible,
So
horrible vision.
that's one of the areas that we'll be working with FDOT.
Okay.
We'll have to do, we'll have to look at a series of different types of improvements there to see what we settle on when we're working with them. And it's saying that the southern end of Southwest 46. We're probably going to be extending improvements for each of those roadways due to the amount of traffic that we're going to be. Because in addition to working with FDOT, we also have to work with the local and stuff. And so some of the improvements needed to do with the local. But yeah, that's definitely coming as we get further into the process. And we're aware that something, with the development that we're proposing is going to have impacts to roadways, and we know that we're going to be making it.
I'm gonna piggyback on that real quick. So who will be responsible for then dealing with the railroad? Since it runs right there, it will be you or DOT.
We'll ultimately be responsible for working out any kind of improvements and coordinating with them. So we understand that can take a significant amount of time, so we're already planning for such type of coordination. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's the developer and the applicant.
Back to the changes, I see a lot of commercial potential, which that's music to my ears, because as it stands, the more houses we build, the more strain it causes the city versus commercial adds more to the city. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think more people move in, oh, we got more money. No, it actually costs the city money. With that being said, can the potential of planned development go from, let's say we're at a 60-40 split, where you guys be like, I don't want to bring up the RV park, but all of a sudden, hey, we want to move it to 80-20, where it's 80% residential now, 20% commercial. Is that something that can we put towards the dais saying, hey, we like this idea, however, we want to maintain it 60-40, 60 being understanding subdivisions, 40% being commercial.
And Madam Chair, what is presented for you, the number of, don't want to overuse the word entitlement. The entitlements that we're proposing, the different types of development, when that goes through, that would be approved by the city commission. That we can't come back, without coming back in front of this board and the city commission yet, we can't come back and say, oh, we're gonna do twice as much residential, half as much commercial. We can't do that. We have to go through this process. And I don't think that's the intent here. I think the intent here is in anything we'd like to see the non-residential be wildly successful, because there are some areas of flexibility in there to be built into the plan that those types of pieces can also expand. That plan that we would run.
Thank you. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're all illegal. So.
Yes, but Rich said I get to make the decision, so
And you have the gavel, so I don't want to.
So I have one question. Can each of these phases be, since there's phase 1 and phase 2 we're talking about, be broken into other subparts when they go for development?
Madam Chair, yeah, most likely they will. There'll be subphases.
And who will control the rate of like development growth of that?
Ultimately, the city commission, but in reality, the market. It's going to be driven by market demand. If there's a high demand for the commercial or the high demand for the residential in the community, then they'll build at a higher rate than if there were moderate to low demand.
So even when we talk about a 20-year plan and some of the reservations, restrictions, capacity issues, if the single family homes start, the market increases, could those all be built in both phases before anything else is built?
In Madam Chair, in theory, I guess they could, but I know that's not the intent, because both the non-residential and the residential, the intent of their plan is to both to drive each other. So in theory, if there was no market for the other improvements that they were looking to make, but again, to Mr. Brasher's point, a lot of the improvements are going to have to be made up front. And so there'll need to be a return on that investment, which couldn't only be handled, be brought about by residential. It would also need the non-residential component for that to be successful. And just to that point too, just so everybody's clear, any improvements necessary to water, wastewater, roadway, railroad crossings, Any of those that are necessary to facilitate the development are paid for by the developer. That's, the city doesn't pay for any of that. Where the city's portion comes in is if the city sees a benefit to upsizing those new facilities, the new pipes or whatever, to promote further development in the area, then the city might join in an agreement with the developer to pay for the cost of the upsizing. But if they only require, say, an 8-inch sewer line to serve their development, they only pay for that. If the city wants it to be 12-inch, the city would pay the difference between the two to the city's benefit. And there are a lot of utility improvements in this project. They're going to benefit, even if the city doesn't go into additional participation agreement like that, would still benefit the city as a whole. For instance, a water tank that they're going to put in. Water tank would improve. I know I'm sounding like I know what I'm talking about as a utility director, but I'm not. I'm learning from. But that water tower will not only serve that development, but it'll also improve the water pressure anywhere around it that's connected to that system. So can have a effect on your ISO ratings and everything. So insurance, yeah.
Don't say something that's not 100%.
Are there any other questions by the board at this time?
That I want to say that was an illegal move by Mayor Morrow, but
That's not a
I
question.
do
for
have
me.
a question though.
Go ahead.
So in regards to the utility, for the waste plant that we have, I understand the development of another a water tower. The waste plant that we have just where NES is, where the elementary school is, that will be sufficient enough to handle what, or upgrading that would be enough to handle the volume that's being proposed here, or are you asking for another wastewater?
Madam Chair, no, it wouldn't entail another wastewater plant. The city's already contemplating the next round of expansion of the existing wastewater plant. If this goes to full development potential, it would probably necessitate yet another expansion. But that would, again, the city watches those numbers over time to make sure that as capacity is needed, then capacity is provided. And so if it got to the point where when you get to a certain percentage of your capacity, you have to go into your planning for your next round. And so it's an ongoing incremental progression. It's not all at once. You don't, even though this project is going to take about 1 million gallons of water or wastewater, you don't build for that now. You build for that over time as it actually develops out, and you stay ahead of it. But you don't. Most communities couldn't afford to build that to that scale because you'd have all of this unused capacity sitting out there for many years.
Are there any further questions from the board? Okay, so at this time, the final argument can be made by the applicant.
We appreciate the discussion, and we appreciate the advice and tips from the presentation that we were given. Consider moving forward, what received and heard, and we do want to emphasize though that at the core of this, the idea is to capitalize off of an asset that the city has at the Champions Park, and we were going back more than a decade ago, prior to once the land had been donated for the park, but before it was there, this PD was approved, and it was always intended for there to be this mutually beneficial relationship between this project and the park. They should both help each other flourish as they succeed. And so that is still what's driving this project, and we do feel that the benefits that come from spreading it out over a larger area do lend it towards development that is much more compatible with nearby development and other developments in the city. So that was the intent. I will personally work on how to convey that message in a way that's more accurate and good advice. So that is that's what's at the core of this project, and
and respecting the intent of the economic development overlay boundary and bringing job creating uses and economic growth. That's kind of my final statement. Think of any other questions that we have.
Thank you very much. At this time, staff can make their final argument.
No final arguments, Madam Chair.
So at this time, the city attorney will advise us as to the applicable law and factual findings for this matter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a couple different processes that were mentioned at the very beginning of this hearing, and I just want to reiterate them at this time because I think both of them are correct. I think CHW is correct that there is a state coordinated review process, and this will ultimately be submitted, I believe, after the first public hearing with the commission to the state for review. And so there is that part of the process going on. And then obviously we have our quasi judicial process where we are governed by the competent and substantial evidentiary standard, which essentially means that all of the testimony, documents, and other evidence that's been observed tonight can be considered. And the question for the board is whether this establishes a substantial basis based on all of the evidence that the ordinance as presented for the economic development overlay area amendment, whether that should be passed. Taken into consideration what our comp plan has in terms of its goals, policies, and objectives, which I think were addressed in the CHW report. So that is, and just to be clear, I know there was some back and forth on this a little bit, but for purposes of our quasi judicial procedure, we should only entertain a motion at this time with respect to the economic development overlay process. We can do the subsequent hearings, but we can adopt the evidence, the report that has been presented by CHW in that regard, and then go forward on that basis. But the only issue right now is the ordinance that I read at the beginning of this hearing with respect to the amendment to the economic development overlay area.
So with that, we can deliberate the application or we can start with a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that ordinance 2021-11 and comprehensive plan amendment 2104 be sent forward to the city commission with a recommendation for approval.
I second.
We have a motion by board member Conrad and a second by board member Urchad. Is there any discussion on the motion by the board? If not, we'll move to public comment. The number is on your screen for those of you watching via YouTube or on Zoom. Once you get into the meeting, you can press the *9 to raise your hand so that you can let us know if you have questions on this particular item, which is the economic development overlay area. The meeting that you see on YouTube is 30 seconds behind what is going on in the chamber. So we are giving you plenty of time to let us know if you have comments on this issue. Does anyone have their hand raised? Is there anyone in the room? You do have brand new time for this if you want to come forward.
it's been a little bit of a disappointment for a few years because I live nearby and I see activity or inactivity at Champions Park. It's always exciting when I see a tournament going on. What's really disheartening is when all the people turn right, turn left, and go to the red lights and go out. They spend their money in Gainesville. They leave their congestion and their trash here. And what do we get out of it? It's time to start getting some benefit, some, development, some businesses. I love the rooftops aspect, but I'm more like commercial development, even light industrial. People have to drive to Gainesville, and I've lived here most of my life. And it's a pain having to go to Gainesville. It's like a race going to town every day. Thankfully, I don't have to do it. But think about that, please, that before you do the vote, that all of this whole Champions Park has kind of been a boondoggle because it has been just sitting there at times treading water, at times we're getting, looks like some activity, but we're not getting a benefit. We're not growing as a city because we don't have an increase in tax base. And that's what's going to build the infrastructure of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone on Zoom? No. Okay, if there's no further public comment, we'll go to a roll call vote. Board Member Conrad,
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock. Aye. Board Member Urched.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion passes 4-0. So we will move on to the next quasi judicial hearing, and the city attorney shall read that into the record for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is ordinance 2021-12, preliminary development order number PD/LDR 21-08, a preliminary development order of the city of Newberry, Florida, pursuant to ordinance 2021-12 of the city of Newberry land development regulations as amended on an application to amend the official zoning atlas of the land development regulations pursuant to an application by the property owner of said property, providing for a PD amendment from City of Newberry Plan Development PD to City of Newberry Plan Development PD of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing development orders in conflict and providing an effective date.
Thank you very much. And now we will move to the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
I mean, staff overview, sorry.
This is the second of the three applications related to the Sandia Town Park plan development. This is the one that will change the allocation of the entitlements for phase one. So this is a request to amend the PD to reallocate the mix of permitted housing types, reduce the overall number of single-family units in phase one, reduce the total number of multifamily units in phase one, and reduce the overall commercial component of the PD in phase one. It also reduces the number of hotel or motel rooms that are permissible from 600 to 400. Again, property location C is outlined in red, the original plan development. The preliminary development plan amendment that you've already seen in the applicant's presentation, previous presentation. If it's the chair's will, I'll go ahead and go through the staff presentation because the applicant's presentation is done, but we can refer back to that back and forth. It might make it a little bit easier because they don't have a separate presentations for each piece.
I think that will be acceptable since the applicant indicated that their presentation is for all three items.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
is it possible, since we've already seen these slides and we've heard this presentation, to just say, are there any questions and go on to the next part of the quasi judicial procedure?
I don't think that staff presented their portion of,
It's pretty short.
okay.
That's right. So, again, to reiterate, there's single family, 200 units, which is 30 less than originally permitted under the existing PD. Multifamily units, 400, which is 270 less. Commercial, 300,000 square feet, 70,000 less than the original PD. And 400 motel or hotel rooms, which is 200 less than the original PD allowed for. As far as the permitted uses, just so you understand, under the residential single family counts as a single family detached, but it also qualifies under the terminology in the plan development, or the preliminary development. It's a detached or attached dwelling, duplex, townhomes, that kind of thing. You can also have community amenity centers, parks, rec areas, public utilities, those kind of things in the residential single family section. And then as far as the mixed use, this outlines the wider range of different non-residential, well, some residential and then the non-residential uses that can occur in the mixed use, things that are compatible with residential. So project benefits that staff sees for the city, substantial improvements to area infrastructure of water, wastewater, transportation infrastructure, all going to have to be improved and will benefit the area as a whole, as well as the specific development. And then, of course, we talked quite a bit about new commercial and manufacturing jobs that will result from the project. And then there will be significant capital investment. By the time this is built out at the end of 20 years, it would not, I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say it would be somewhere in the hundreds of millions of dollars potentially in capital investment. And then, of course, you get the Championship Ballpark Arena as a complement to Champions Park, which makes Champions Park yet again that much more attractive to tournament play, having that arena. And is another inducement for a hotel, which the city has been hoping for. So staff's recommendation based on all those reasons, plus the information provided by the applicant in their application package, recommends approval for ordinance 2021-12 and LD application LDR 21-08.
Need to make sure that nobody has entered on Zoom that needs to be sworn in. And we're going to do ex parte for this. Board Member Conrad,
No.
Board Member Woodcock. Any ex parte communication?
No, I'm sorry.
Board Member Urched?
No, ma'am.
And I don't have any either that hasn't already been declared. Is that the end of your presentation? Thank you very much, sir. There is no third-party intervener, so we will move to public comment. Oh, the applicant's coming up.
I just want to make a quick statement, Craig Fraser with CHW, that our presentation from the first item, we'd like to enter that into the record for this item. And with that, I'll return to my seat.
Thank you very much. So now we will turn to public comment. The number will soon be appearing on your screen. There it is. If you call into the meeting, you are free to let us know by pressing *9 to let us know you have a question on this item, which is for the amendment to the current plan development. If there's anyone in the room who would like to come forward with a public comment while we're waiting on the Zoom people, while we wait for the 30-second delay to catch up. And Janine, does anyone have their hand raised? Okay. So at this time, the applicant may cross-examine. There are no party interveners. Staff, do you have any cross-examination at this time?
No, Madam Chair.
So are there any questions from the board for the applicant at this time or staff? One question, anyone? One question. I don't care. One question I do have is, we talked about the capacity issues, and I know that there's been some division over who's responsible, the school to catch up with Newberry and Newberry to keep an eye on growth, but is there a way that we monitor across all planned developments as they're building what the capacity hit will be to the schools or to water and sewer, utilities?
Yes, Madam Chair, as far as utilities go, anything related to city streets and roads, utilities, that's handled internally by the city staff. And so we keep a capacity / concurrency system in place to track that. And for instance, like I said, when you reach certain thresholds of capacity usage, then it triggers the requirement to start planning for the next round and the next round. And so the utilities director keeps a very close eye on that. As far as school goes, the city planning department works with the interlocal working group with the school board in terms of school capacity. And so whenever a application for a new phase comes in for residential development or any kind of residential development that could have an impact on schools, then there's actually the school board has on their website a calculation sheet that you go in and you enter whether it's single family, multifamily, number of units, that kind of thing. And it they have factors that they use to calculate the student generation from that development. And then under a certain threshold, it's basically you self-certify that it meets the school board's concurrency requirements. And if it's over a certain threshold, then they have take a crack at approving the project, or reviewing and then ultimately approving the project.
And just because this has come up in past discussions for developments in that area, the different types of developments, have there been traffic concerns about that area from champions, and have there been noise concerns?
Madam Chair, planning department is in charge of code enforcement. I have not received any complaints from our current or previous code enforcement officer about champions, except I believe there was one complaint about people parking on private property across the street. Noise is not, I don't believe we've gotten any complaints about noise. As far as transportation goes, I'm not aware of any. If there are complaints, they haven't risen to the point where somebody's calling it in and making a formal complaint.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the board? Does the applicant want to make a final argument? Staff, would you like to make a final argument? So now the city attorney will advise us on the applicable law and factual findings that we'll be using.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are governed by the same substantial and competent evidentiary standard that I mentioned before, and the board can factor in the report that was adopted into the record from our prior hearing.
Thank you very much. We were chattering about the promotion you gave me to mayor, so.
Oh, did I say Madam Mayor? Okay, Madam Mayor, Madam Chair, Chair Baker, all the above, whatever it takes.
So at this time, unless there's further deliberation from the board, I can entertain a motion on this.
Madam Chair, move for ordinance, I make a motion for ordinance 2021-12, land development regulation 21-08, be sent forward to the commission with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
There's been a motion from board member Conrad and a second from board member Urchin. Is there any deliberation or comments from the board on the motion on the floor? I will say before we go to, I take it to public comment that I am concerned about the impact on the schools. I understand this is a 20-year grow. Some of my concerns are not the applicant's fault, because we do have other developers who are developing at a very fast pace. So I'm concerned at the rate of growth we're seeing versus what our school can handle since it's already over capacity. But I saw that the school board member, Ms. Certain, was talking with the applicant, so hopefully they'll be able to address that with the commission. We will now open for public comment. The number is on your screen. You can call in to give any comments on this application, which is for the amendment to the current plan development. There's a 30-second delay between what you're seeing on YouTube and what is going on in the chamber. So we're giving you plenty of time to call in if you have a concern to voice. Once you get in there, if you'll press *9 to let us know that you would like to make a comment on the issue. And no one has raised their hand on Zoom. Is there any public comment by anyone in the chamber? So we will move to a roll call vote. Mayor Conrad,
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock. Aye. Board Member Urched,
Aye.
and I will vote aye. So the motion passes 4-0. We will now move on to item number 3, and the city attorney will read it into the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry if I offended you, Mayor Marlowe, a few minutes back there.
Don't try to apologize.
I will reiterate, though, that Chair Baker is the one who has the gavel, and that's a pretty powerful thing. So regardless of title. So ordinance number 2021-13, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, relating to the rezoning of approximately 311.81 contiguous acres of land, more or less, pursuant to an application by the property owner of said acreage, amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from agriculture within an economic development overlay area to planned development PD of certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Thank you very much. At this time, I will see if we have any ex parte communication with the board members on this item. Board Member Conrad.
No.
Board Member Woodcock. I have none. Board Member Urched.
No.
Thank you. I have to make sure I'm following the rules. So at this time, we will go to the staff overview and report, and the applicant will let us know that his presentation will cover this item as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we can skip some of the perfunctory information. There's actually one slide that I want to get to that covers Member Conrad's concerns. And that would be this one. Okay, so this I took a stab at trying to take all of it. It's a complex application, multiple applications. So I tried to take a stab at paring it down to the basics, which if you look at phase 1, we talked about how 200 single family units is actually a reduction of 30, and multifamily units was a 400, a reduction of 270, et cetera. And so then you look at the phase 2 entitlements that are being requested, single family units 750, stadium 1,000 seats. This is what is added to, in addition to what's available in phase 1, looking at the totality of the whole project.
That's very confusing, Brian. You lost me. If you said single family units is 30 less than 200.
In phase 1. No.
Oh,
The 200 units represent the request, which is a 30 unit reduction from what's currently permitted
in phase
in
1,
phase 1.
but 750 is added to that 200
so-
for a total of 950.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
that's what we need to get
And
straightened
so
out with the commission,
The
because
third column now shows you total single family units to be 950, which is an addition of 720 overall single family units. Multifamily units is a net reduction of 270 units. Commercial is a net reduction of 70,000 square feet. And hotel and motel rooms are a net reduction of 200 rooms. But you'll then have the addition of up to 550,000 square foot of light manufacturing industrial and 150,000 square foot sports arena and 1,000 seat stadium. And so I tried to net out the differences across both requests. And so that's what come up with.
Okay, well, that slide kind of leaves me more confused than I was, but I'm not going to labor it with you. But one, that's not in our package, so I'm just trying to get my arms around it now. But can you send me all the slides that you put up here that have the more detail in them?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll study them later, but it's very difficult to understand that. I think it was sold as this is a reduction in the number of units. And this, I think, tells you that we are actually going up to a lot more single family units. Some little minor changes with the commercial and the addition of the light industrial and all that stuff. But when I initially read it, and then I saw the increases in the usage, I thought I'd been misled, or that I just didn't understand what it was.
If you look at the staff report for phase one, it'd be easy to get that impression because it's only dealing with phase one and the net effect or the effect on phase one. But then when you add in phase two and combine the two, you come up with the third column, which is shows you how you're netting it.
What I'm saying, before you present it to the commission, maybe you can make that you can dumb it down a little bit, so that it can be understood. I'm sorry. A little more easily, because it is very complicated. And I sympathize with you that you've got to take something that's very complicated and make 5 civilians understand it.
And so these are the same benefits you already saw on the previous slide. And so staff recommendation is to approve ordinance 2021-15.
And the applicant is stepping up to the mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Craig Fraser with CHW. Again, I would like to put our previous presentation into the record for this item and be happy to answer any questions. If not, I will sit down.
Thank you very much. There's no third-party intervener, so we will move to public comment. The number for public comment is up on your screen at the moment. If you call in, if you'll press *9 when you call, you can raise your hand to let us know that you have a comment or question regarding this item, which is for a new phase 2 of this plan development. And would change it would change the portion from agricultural to plan development. There's a 30-second delay between YouTube and the meeting in the chamber, so we give you plenty of time to call in if you have a comment. If you are in the chambers and would like to make a comment, you can step up to the podium as well. And there's nobody on Zoom. Thank you very much. So does the applicant have any cross-examination? Staff have any cross-examination? Does the board have any questions regarding this item? The one question I will have that we've asked similarly on some other developments is since there are 950 houses between both phases, what is the planned rate of growth in those houses? Is it 50 years, 100 years, 150 a year? Is it 20 a year?
Madam Chair, that number I do want, because in our presentation, some of those numbers were different because we broke out townhomes separately. So just as a point of clarity, those aren't all, your standard detached single family homes. There's a number of those at the townhomes. If you remember, kind of in the middle southeast portion between the recreation and single family, there was a townhome development that had a number of those.
So could you tell me what the breakdown between the townhomes and the detached single family
I
are?
can if you let me return mine.
Sure.
Chair, yeah.
And I would like to say that I did read the packet, but it was almost 300 pages. And so sometimes these details are forgotten by the time we have questions. Yes, sir.
So Madam Chair, it is 750 detached, 250 attached.
And what is the, for the single family, what is the, not proposed, but estimated rate of building perhaps?
I mean, that's a shot in the dark right now, but I mean, I can tell you a typical phase that we see from similar developments, maybe 50, somewhere 50, 75 lots a year or something like that. So that's when, like now, it is, yeah, but over that time, I don't think every year would be at such an absorption rate. It fluctuates, but I think that that's kind of a standard rule of thumb that we use when asked that question at this point in the process. Sure.
Are there any other board member questions?
Not questions, but back, just to be on the record, my concern is definitely the impact on the schools. Hoping that we can, like you mentioned earlier, have that discussion, see how we can, get that squared away.
Does the applicant have a final argument? Does staff have a final argument? Can the city attorney advise us on the applicable law and fact findings we should be using?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're governed by the substantial and competent evidentiary standard once again, and we can, again, by adoption, consider the report from CHW, the presentation previously provided.
Thank you very much. At this time, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to forward the ordinance 2021-13 land development regulation 21-09 to the city commission with our recommendation for approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from board member Conrad and a second from board member Urchin. Is there any deliberation from the board on this item?
Madam Chair. Just before we take this vote and everybody scurries home to their families, I wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to this developer in particular. This is a special project that goes back before my time on the dais. And it's rare that you have a local developer who believes in the community enough to donate land to the community to actively work at bringing in some of these developments. And I know that we've had hiccups along the way, but they haven't had anything to do with the developer. And here we are back finalizing what this vision started out to be. This development is also rare that you have developers who come in and understand the infrastructure improvements that have to come with it and don't balk at that. In fact, bring those improvements to us and say, we're going to have to fix this road. We're going to have to fix that because, I want to build a nice development. So it's been a pleasure to have you as a member of this community, sir. And before you leave, because I want you to rush on out and get home to your family, I just wanted to hear you say, I want you to hear us say publicly how much we appreciate what you've done for our community. Thank you, sir.
Any other comments from the board? I just want to echo what I said earlier. I do think, and I do appreciate the level of detail that went in this packet. I spent days reading this over, and because I think it's our due diligence to have, to read this and to understand what is before us, because it's not just about us, it's about the citizens in our community too. So I am concerned about the capacity issues. I'm not sure how to solve for that. I think there are many good things about this development that will enhance Newberry, but the home situation and the number of students it produces is concerning, and I hope that we can find some sort of solution so that our schools aren't bursting at the seams. So now we'll move to public comment unless the board can make a comment while we're moving to public comment and giving them their 30 seconds. The number is on your screen. You can call if you have public comment. Once you get into the meeting, if you'll press *9 to raise your hand to let us know that you have a comment on this issue, which is a change from agricultural to planned development for phase 2 of this project. You can let us know. Again, there's a 30-second delay between what you're seeing on YouTube or on Zoom and what is happening in City Hall. Are there any public comments? Are there any further comments from the board? So at this time, we'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Conrad,
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock,
Aye.
Board Member Urchad.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion passes 4-0. All 3 of these items will be heard by the Newberry City Commission, or is it Board of Adjustment? City Commission on April 12th. And that concludes our quasi judicial procedures. So we'll move to the non-quasi judicial part of the meeting, which is not much. So topics for members for discussion. Mayor Conrad.
Just wonder if anybody knows how Ricky is doing?
I had an update yesterday and it's sounding pretty good. And they're hoping he's in rehab, y'all know that. And they're moving him soon to a different rehab, excuse me, out of Shands. But tracking, following along, responding, so things are
Great.
looking good.
That's all I have.
And we just ate the rest of his orange slices. I'll let him know.
Board Member Woodcock.
I want to just to thank the city staff for goldfish, bottled water, the 2 ladies taking care of us tonight with the technology. You've done a great job. Thank you. And again, the presentations tonight were very good. And don't, thanks a lot for keeping us moving.
Board Member Urchad. Oops, sorry. Did I
I'm
cut you off?
sorry. I was just going to say, don't forget vocational.
All right. Board Member Urchad.
First, thank you very much for the presentations. A big announcement I want to say on behalf of Newberry Politics Facebook page. We want to congratulate Mayor Marlowe for running this election and actually being unopposed. Also, our newest commissioner to be seated, Tony Mazin. Oh man, I want to say my Maison. He's a very good friend of mine, and he ran unopposed. And best of luck to Tim Martin, the incumbent, and Joy Glanzer on the upcoming election. Those are the only 2 things we are voting on come April. So other than that, thank you to everybody that presented today and all the hard work.
I have no comments. Mayor Marlowe.
I just had one, and I didn't want to bring this up during quasi judicial, and I know that we're all concerned about the schools and the school capacity, but I've been sitting up here for 10 years, and for 10 years, I've been talking to different school board members and telling them that they have access. We have these concurrency meetings. They can track everyone who has entitlements. They know every development that's on the books. They have the same ability that the municipality has to look at capacity into the future and to be proactive. And for the 10 years that I've been paying attention, they have failed to be proactive. So it's difficult for me to listen to Newberry has to stop being proactive because another board is simply refusing to be proactive. I know it's our kids and it's our problem to deal with, but it's a frustrating situation to find yourselves in. as Mr. Thomas was speaking about our capacity, we, by law, we project ahead. We look and see what does have entitlements, what's that going to do to capacity. And when we hit a mark, we are compelled to begin pre-planning proactively for that. So I hear this board, I hear the commission, I hear the community, everyone worried about schools. And it's frustrating to me for people to come into this building and express that frustration when they need to be at the electric administrative building expressing that frustration because they have access to all the same data that we do. I've said it to the BOCC, I've said it to the school board, I've said it to the other municipalities. They need to be tracking where this development was always going to happen. They had entitlements. I'm not afraid to use that word. Thank you for it. They had the zoning, they've got it, they had development rights there. It was always on the books. They've had 10 years to know that this growth was going to come. So to come out and say, well, your kids, the Newberry kids won't be able to go to Newberry schools if you guys continue to grow, I find that to be a tough pill to swallow because they've had access to the same data. So every board needs to be responsible for being proactive and using data and being bold and making decisions and not try to kick the can to a different board and ask other entities to make up for past school board member mistakes. Because we got a new school board member, maybe they will be bold, maybe they'll make different decisions, but previous school board members have not. And it's a grossly unfair situation to come in and try to tell a developer who's had a plan for 10 years that since I haven't done anything for 10 years, I don't want you to do your plan because I didn't catch up and I didn't stay up to breast. So it's just something that I want us to think about because we bring this up now at every development that comes in, and every development that comes in, I think with the exception of one, has been on the books for quite some time. So that's my final comment. Thank you.
I'm not sure that the board is still, is even now getting the correct on. Where all these people got that.
Obviously, that's a different topic.
City attorney, any comments?
Nothing, Madam Chair.
And with that, this meeting is adjourned. What?
Now you have public comments at the end?
We don't
We don't do that?
typically, yeah. Meeting is adjourned.